Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to episode 7 of Time to Shine. My name's Adrian. I'm also known as Northern Star on Twitter, and I'm joined by my amazing, talented co-host, Mike.
You flatter me, my friend. It is so good to be back. Yes, hello everyone. It is me, Mike, also known as the Buried Truck, back for some more Shining Time magic, of course.
The magic never stops.
There's just something about this podcast.
Oh, man.
I wonder, at what point are we going to completely run that joke into the ground?
That'll happen at some point. Maybe our viewers will leave very frustrated comments.
I'm sure they will. And you know what? It's going to be me who does it, because I just can't stop myself.
I know. We are endlessly enthusiastic and corny, and it just keeps on flowing. So we are continuing down our journey of season 1. So last time when you joined us, we did episodes 2 and 3 of season 1, and now we're going to do a couple more. And Mike, it just feels like it keeps getting better as it goes on. Just as I'm like, oh, this is so good, I'm like, oh, this is better.
Yeah, I really get that vibe throughout all of season 1. Like, it's just, yeah, I don't know how to describe it. It's literally, I'm picturing in my mind the sequence of the episodes in season 1, and it never feels like, in terms of the quality of the show, it never feels like it stops or like takes a step back from what you saw before. Like it's always building a little bit more and more, and by the time you get to the end of it, you're like, oh man, this is such a satisfying viewing experience.
Exactly. And not to use a freight train analogy, but I'm going to anyway. It feels like, because it's the perfect place to do it, it feels like, you know, we started with episode 1. The train was pulling out of the station. It was a great start. It was exciting. We had a lot to see, a lot to take in. And as the train is picking up speed and going from station to station, you're noticing more and more. And you watch the series gain momentum, and the actors get more comfortable in their roles. You see Shining Time begin to sort of have these little routines and things that happen, and it starts to build its own lore. And it really, I feel like that's where the magic of it comes in, because it takes on a bit of a world of its own. And I think that's probably what drew kids in, is because once you start it, it just kind of keeps going, and it has this very natural flow that I think happens when you have kind of the right ingredients mixed all together, and then things can just flourish on their own. That's my very large, convoluted metaphor for how I feel season 1 is.
Well, no, I mean, you're completely right. Like, there's really, it's got the perfect combination of elements that all, you know, independently but also cohesively grow together. Because you've got the live action segments in the station, you've got the jukebox band and the music that just keeps getting better and better all the time. Yeah. You've got, you know, the stuff in the picture machine or the anything tunnel, which is always interesting. Yep. And then, of course, you have, you know, the constantly evolving and growing world of, you know, Thomas and all the other engines on the island of Sodor. And there's always something new to behold in every single aspect of the show.
Yeah, totally. It's a treat. And I think they did a good job at just integrating season 1 of Thomas right into Shining Time. You get to kind of learn along with the characters and their arcs, and I think we really see that in these 2 episodes with the James stories, which I actually quite enjoy in these episodes.
Me too, and that's, yeah, you're absolutely right. I did notice that especially when I first watched it too, and definitely in the first episode we're going to be talking about the integration of the Thomas stories into the plot. Yes. You wouldn't think like they'd be able to really tie it together all that well, but very cleverly they do just that. So
they do, and
we will get right into that.
For those very astute listeners, Mike's clever pun of "tie it together" hints at a very big theme in one of these episodes. So just keep that in mind. I'm going to be completely
honest with you. That was unintentional.
You know, the only reason I noticed it is because I accidentally wrote it down myself, and then in brackets I wrote like pun intended. So I'm just that corny. Sorry. Anyway,
we are the same wavelength, my friend. This is why this podcast is such a success.
I apologize for our endless silliness, but without further ado, let's get into episode 4.
Oh. Oh. Oh, boy, now that's what I call a broken clock.
This episode is called Pitching In and Helping Out. And I'm going to give a little summary for y'all who haven't seen it. But again, if you haven't, please go and have a watch. It's a lovely 22 minutes. So basically, we start with Stacy trying to fix the big station clock. So she's up there and she has a really humorous exchange with Schemer, which I really enjoy. The kids come in and yes, the kids come in and they're asking Stacy about what she's doing, and they end up learning about string and the many uses of string, which is sort of where our tie-in pun comes from. And they also learn about the importance of helping other people, which is demonstrated in especially the first Thomas story. And Mr. Conductor kind of helps lean them into that moral a little bit. And then we have, just on that theme of helping others, Matt and Tanya encounter Harry in his workshop trying to fix the old Shining Time Station, trains from here to everywhere sign. And he's trying to do it with solder and it's not working. And I love they suggest string. And he's like, string! That's the ticket? Like, he's never thought of it before. Like, genius! Oh, man. And then, kind of fittingly at the end, they finally end up helping Schemer with, very begrudgingly, with the encouragement of Stacy, because Schemer is having difficulty with his shoelaces. Excuse me, he's not tying them properly and his shoes keep falling off. And so Stacy says he's going to be grumbling about his shoes forever. Come on. And they decide to give him the string. And he's so touched by that, he gives them the holy kettle that he was trying to sell to Stacy at the beginning, which then becomes a flower pot for the string flowers. So it's a very nice full circle. And they end up fixing the clock at the end, much to everyone's happiness. And there's a big cheer that kind of closes us out into the theme song.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. So that's the basic gist. There's more little details that we'll get into. But for me, this is actually one of my favorite season 1 episodes. And it's funny because as I was like looking at the title and stuff and going to watch it, I was like, I really hope this is the one I'm thinking of. And it was, where it starts off with that great Stacy Schemer banter. He's like trying to auction off his tea kettle. And this, like I said, it's where the show feels like it's hitting its stride on a whole new level. Their banter is getting really fun, and I can see them sort of probably improving a bit. I like the angle of Stacy being up high on the ladder and then looking down at Schemer. And there's just something, I always loved that beginning to the episode. It always made me laugh.
Symbolizing the levels of intelligence, perhaps?
No, yeah, probably. And when she's like, you think you throw it out, there's a hole in the bottom. And he's like, that's so you can pour 2 cups of tea at once. Like, oh, that's just, it's really lovely. Yeah,
it is.
What are some of your first thoughts on this one, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, you're totally right. It's just such a lovely episode. It feels very I mean, it's weird to say this because a good majority of Shining Time Station feels this way, but there's something about this episode that feels very slice of life to me. Like, there's not really any, big problems or high stakes that are needing to be tended to or things that need to be solved. It's just the kids are figuring out what to do with some string that they found. And along the way, they just so happen to, help Harry and help Schemer at the end. And, it feels like a very calm episode. And I think they probably needed that. Not that the earlier episodes were anything high stress or overstimulating or any means, but you've had a string of episodes where you're really working on introducing characters and you're making the viewers feel comfortable with the world that they're trying to settle into.
Yes.
It's just nice to have an episode that really dials it back from I mean, let's be honest, with Shining Time on a scale of 1 to 10, it's usually at like a 5. It's never too crazy or too stressful, but I feel like this episode really dials back to like a 2. Like it's a very fun, carefree kind of episode. And as you talked about, Adrian, like the part with Harry, gosh, we should start a counter how many times I gush about how much I love Harry in season 1. But honestly, like it's so fun because you've got the case of, the hardworking railroad man who's, using a tried and true method of trying to fix a sign. It's not working for him. And it's just taking the kids saying, hey, why don't you try this? And going right back to basics to solve it. And you see the excitement in his voice when he's like, there's a solution. Finally.
That was staring me right in the face the whole time.
Exactly. And just the satisfaction there. And the other thing that I really love about season 1 as a whole, but especially the early episodes, is kind of how you kind of see Stacy evolve from, wanting to kind of do everything on her own, trying to make sure that she's she feels like she's a competent station master. She can do things and take charge without necessarily needing the help of others. But over time, she, very easily comes to terms with the fact that she's got people around her who will help her and should help her when she needs it. And I love the little exchange about midway through when she gets Mr. Conductor to help her find the oil can. And,
I love that.
They've got that little exchange. Yeah, they've got that little exchange where he's like, the oil can isn't over there. And she's like, don't tell me where it is. And then finally she's like, okay, tell me, where is it?
That's one of my favorite exchanges.
Like, you think about... Yeah, and you think about like season 2 and 3, like with when George comes on as Mr. Conductor, and I mean, they have a lovely little on-screen relationship, but I don't think that the dynamic she has with George as Mr. Conductor is as interesting in that regard as with Ringo's Mr. Conductor, because it almost feels like there's a bit of like a brother sister, like kind of combative relationship.
It's kind of chummy,
Yeah, they're kind of playful and they like tease each other a little bit more.
I love when she says
that scene is fantastic.
How did you know I was looking for the oil? Just a lucky guess.
Just a lucky guess.
and at the end, when she is like, he suggests going to look under the ticket booth, and then he sort of points at her and winks and disappears. They just have have a really good chemistry, I think, the two of them, which is surprising considering they're not actually looking at each other. She's looking at a doll or a piece of tape. And but I do know that they would, in season 1, they would sometimes throw each other lines. So maybe Dee Dee was throwing Ringo lines when he was doing his green screen bits, because there is good chemistry.
And that was the thing I was going to say is, like, with season 1, Ringo was still, even when he wasn't recording his scenes, he was still on set, and they would toss those lines back and forth. Whereas did George ever actually... Was he on set with any of the other actors, or did he just worry about recording his stuff separately?
It was typically separate. I know that Dee Dee lamented that she didn't get to see him all that much. I think there was some overlap, though, for sure. But most of the time, it was pretty separate. And I know George's schedule was very hectic at that time, because he was doing multiple other things. He was still doing shows and stuff. I know Ringo was busy, but he seemed pretty full-on devoted to Shining Time when he did it.
Yeah, and you have to wonder if, maybe if George wasn't as busy, if he had more time to be on set, would we have seen something similar or a variation on that sort of relationship? But, it's fun to think about. But it's present here for sure, and it's a lot of fun to watch. And, you just kind of giggle whenever Stacy and Mr. C are going at it.
Yeah, totally. And I think you hit the nail on the head when you said comfortable and slice of life, because I think the slice of life ones, I think that's what I was trying to hint at when I was talking before about the end of, I think it's the 3rd episode where they play Wabash Cannonball. And Stacy and Schemer have that little banter, and she scares him. Like that, and she's just like at the desk writing away. It really does feel like you're just getting a little peep into this station as it's just going. And it's nice because it doesn't feel like there has to be like a circus or a this, or it's just like this episode, she's just trying to fix the clock, and it's sort of central to the plot, but not really. Like, yeah, she's trying to find the oil, but it's not life or death, like you say. It's not like JB King is coming to inspect the clocks, and, and Stacy has to fix it on time. She just says, well, the passengers need to see the clocks so that they can know when their trains are going to leave. That's pretty important. But it gives lots of meandering room for Matt and Tanya to do crafts, and
yes,
I think it's enjoyable as a viewer.
Yeah, and I think that, having episodes like this make it even more impactful when, we're jumping a little bit ahead, but towards the end of season 1, when you've got the threat of the station being closed down for the first time. I mean, those episodes, the two-parter, they're very intense episodes by comparison to the rest of the season. And I think having quieter, more calm episodes like this one really heightens that sense of like, oh, this is serious stuff we're dealing with here.
That's a good point, because these are kind of lulling episodes. You forget that this railroad does rely on its success, this railroad station relies on its success as an individual station. So, we become more aware of that. That's a really good point. I hadn't thought of that before. There was one other piece I was going to bring in, and that was just along the lines of Ringo and Stacy, their banter. I love Ringo's rhyming in this. When he says, it's time to share a carrot with my parrot, and my spaghetti needs stretching. It's just so weird and random but fun. And he's dressed, I think he's dressed as like a little chef because he's making lunch. That's right, Mike?
You'll have to help each other with that, I'm afraid. Now, please excuse me for a minute. There's my house. I must go in it. It's time to share a carrot with my parrot. And my spaghetti needs stretching.
Yeah, he's got his little chef's hat on. Yeah. He's got his spoons, which he uses to somehow start the Thomas story,
which is magical. And also, we have our Ringo Sings segment. This is Ringo Drums.
Yes, this is it. This is the first Ringo Drums.
And I don't know if you remember this, Mike, but on YouTube ages back, somebody uploaded a little segment of this clip saying Ringo star drumming on Shining Time Station, and it was just him with his spoons drumming on the wood.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
You remember that? Yeah. Oh, classic. And also we get some classic schemer slapstick at the end too, with the falling, with the shoelaces,
of course,
which we see as a theme that kind of builds on. But I feel like each character is sort of they've got their trademark things now that is established, and we can just kind of watch and enjoy that.
Yeah, I agree. We're definitely starting to settle more into like the usual beats of the characters that we'll see pop up more and more throughout the later episodes.
Yeah. What do you think of the Thomas stories overall, Mike?
I have to say, I really love these two stories. I mean, they're classics.
Yeah.
But I do love, again, going back to how they kind of structured the first season of Shining Time, and how the first, half, or, give or take half of the first season follows the episodes in sequential order. It's kind of nice that, it's almost like a reward for keeping up with the series.
Yes.
Because the first episode we've got here is Thomas and the Breakdown Train, or Thomas Saves the Day for our North American friends. And, this is the final story in Thomas's little arc from his first Railway Series book.
Yes.
And we got, the two major stories from the last episode. So it's kind of nice. It's like, kids tuning in will be like, oh, hey, I remember from the last episode that this is where, Thomas was, and he was supposed to be learning how to handle the trucks better. Mm-hmm. So I really like that about, the way that they structured which episodes, or which Thomas stories rather, were going in which Shining Time episode.
Yeah.
And again, we're going to get another sort of cliffhanger, because your second story this episode is James and the Coaches / James Learns a Lesson.
Yes.
Which, again, there's resolution of some sort, but not totally. There's still more of James's story to go, which you'll have to tune into the next Shining Time episode to watch, or, find it on TV or VHS, whatever it may be. But anyways, these are both really wonderful stories, obviously. Such crucial stories in setting up the foundations of these classic characters that would go on to be the stars of the show, really.
Yes.
And again, the way that they're integrated into the Shining Time story itself is really well done.
It's flawless.
You've got...
I think it's one of the best integrations, actually, of some of the Thomas stories. I noted that, too, when I watched this.
Yeah, because there are some Shining Time episodes, especially when we get into, like, season 2 and 3, where it's I listen to the introduction and I'm like, well, that's kind of a stretch. But
it's totally shoehorned, and you're like, okay, well, all right.
Yeah, we could have workshopped that one a little more, guys. But no, here it's done so well. Like, it's as simple as Matt helps Tanya out of, her fingers are tangled when she tries to do Cat's Cradle, and all it takes is Mr. C saying, oh, you're helping each other out. Well, that's what Thomas did for James. Let me tell you about it. Yeah. And then, of course, you've got, what can we do with the string? Oh, well, they use that to mend a train on the island of Sodor.
Yeah.
And, it's just, I really appreciate that. When they make it feel like it's such a seamless blend, it makes all the difference.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think my theory as to why that blending is so good in season 1 and 2 in particular is... I recently acquired, for those of you who aren't aware, a bunch of Shining Time Station, well, actually the whole series of Shining Time Station scripts, several drafts of each, and the Thomas stories for season 1, 2, and a few drafts from season 3. And what also came in that package were episode outlines, which specifically focused on how to integrate the Thomas stories thematically into each Shining Time Station episode. And, not all the ones that they sort of suggested for season 1 were used. Some of them were used for season 2. But they went through, each pairing of Thomas stories, teased out the themes, and then built, from what I can see, built the Shining Time episodes around that, given that this was a vehicle for Thomas. And I think that's why that was so smooth, those transitions. And I think as they got to season 3, they were waiting for new season 3 episodes as well, which should also been in season 2 of Shining Time, but they also, I think, kind of shoved some older stories into those episodes. That's how it feels to me anyway. And I didn't find similar outlines as season 1 in particular and most of season 2 had. So, interesting little theory time with Adrian.
Oh, we love a little theory. We really do. What do you think of these Thomas stories in particular?
Love them. Thomas and the Breakdown Train has always been a favorite of mine. Not only because it's iconic because Thomas gets his branch line at the end, but you have one of the best, I would say, accidents in the series. You don't see it, which is actually okay, I think, but it's so suspenseful with James screeching through the yard with his wheels actually sparking on screen to simulate that, break block fire. Wow, that is hard to say.
Okay, say that 5 times fast.
Go.
Break block fire. No, I lost it already.
But I always enjoyed it, and as a kid, it was such a triumphant episode because you get to see Thomas helping James and making him feel happy again, but you get to see Thomas being rewarded with his branch line, and then that just ushers in a beautiful series of stories from season 1. So that's a treat. And I like the James stories in season 1. I know that they get a lot of flack, especially that particular book by the Rev, because apparently it was his least favorite book and he was pressured to write it and so on and so forth. But I think, interestingly, that these 4 Thomas episodes from the 2 Shining Time episodes we're discussing today all tie in very well thematically with each other. And I was just thinking about James a little bit. He's kind of like a young buck character. He's got that, that really enthusiastic but kind of reckless energy. And I think that's great because kids have a lot of that energy naturally. And what we're seeing here is in the next episode that the kids kind of do stumble into something before they're ready. And I think that is something that James would do and has done.
Yes.
So I think they all, and I'm getting a bit ahead of myself with talking about that episode, but I think that all ties together. And so when I watched these 2 episodes, I was like, oh, this is so great, because the kids get the continuation of those stories and the themes just tie so well together.
Yeah, they really do. They made all the Thomas stories blend really well with these 2 plots in particular, but really throughout all of season 1. It's just the blending is done so well and so seamlessly that, you know, it kind of makes you more excited. Even if you know the stories, the Thomas stories, I should say, super well, it's still kind of like, oh, yay, we're going to this one now, whenever they introduce it on Shining Time, you know?
Yes, which is a good sign, showing that you're actually excited to see episodes that you've seen a million times. And actually, interestingly, James Learns a Lesson, or James and the Coaches, was one of the first episodes that I remember seeing on VHS. On that James Learns a Lesson tape. So I just have very early memories of watching that opening with Thomas and Edward and them steaming into the station, that really thick steam, and their faces, and them taking off with the express. Yeah, really delicious nostalgia there.
Oh yeah, a lot of iconic shots in these episodes for sure.
Yes. And so moving on from the Thomas stories, we have a few little fun ones in here, kind of other segments. So we have a magic bubble that is string themed and kind of stop motion. What do you think of that little piece?
I think it's a fun little piece.
Yeah, it's cute.
I gotta say, it's one of those things. I feel like I don't have a lot to say about it, but it's just like, you know, it's just a fun little break. It doesn't feel like it's necessarily stopping the flow of the Shining Time episode, but it's just a fun little watch, and it's sort of a refresher. You get back to the station afterwards, and you're like, okay, this is cool.
I know, it's just a fun little vibe. And then we have, as the jukebox song, we have Railroad Corral, which is one of Harry's earworms in this episode. And I have to say, I have a soft spot for Harry when he picks jukebox songs, and this one when he's just like, woke up with it in my head, can't get it out. Again, it feels so slice of life. He's just in his workshop working, comes out, plays this song, and I think it's beautifully done and beautifully sung by Rory Dodd.
We are up in the morning, ere dawning of day, and the grub wagon's busy and flapjacks in play, while the herd is astir over hillside and swale, with the night riders rounding them into the trail. Come take up your cinches, shake up your reins, come wake up your bronco and break for the plains.
Yes, one of many. I feel like there's never been a bad Rory Dodd performance on Shining Time, but this is certainly one of the earliest examples of just how beautiful the songs can be when he graces it with that amazing voice of his.
And I do think, I think sometimes I got bored with the slower songs as a kid, and that might be experienced for quite a few kids, but definitely as I'm, now that I'm older, it's just so gentle. It's almost like a lullaby.
Yeah, it's a very, again, it goes well with the slice of life feel of the rest of the episode. Yep. I think if they had like an upbeat, rambunctious railroad song, it might kind of disturb the flow a little bit, but it's just a very slow, very easy sort of song, and it meshes well with the entire rest of the episode.
I agree. And then we've got one other little segment. We've got a Lucky Lake passenger as the guest.
Yes.
Who's wearing, I was just actually on a scuba diving trip. I was chatting with Mike about it. But she's wearing, I love that she's actually wearing her mask. And yes. So when he says, well, she'll be arriving in 20 minutes, and she's like, 20 minutes. With that nasally sort of noise from having her. Oh, it's just sweet. She has a goldfish in a bowl. I mean, it's cute.
Yeah, I like that she's holding the fish bowl with her scuba gear. It's like, what, are you going for a dive in the fishbowl, or what's going on?
And she would get hot in that gear. She's even wearing her flippers. She would be tripping all over the train.
Yeah, you know what? When I first watched this episode, I definitely, as soon as she came on screen, I was like, what purpose is this going to serve? And then as soon as she leaves and Schemer goes, you see, she doesn't have shoelaces.
I know.
It's like, okay, it all blends together.
It's just more like kind of random fun, you know, but it's, oh man.
It's randomness that works.
It is randomness that works. And I'm just trying to think of just going into some of the trivia here. One thing that I was discussing with Mike before was about the Tanya lasagna comment that he makes here. And I was just noting that also appears in the season 2, episode 1 story Scare Dares. And George Carlin's Mr. Conductor says, well, Tanya Lasagna and Matt the Hat. And he's never... Yeah, he doesn't really have a reason to call her Tanya Lasagna, except that Ringo did. And so my theory was that at that point when they were drafting that episode, they didn't necessarily know that Ringo wouldn't be continuing on as Mr. Conductor. And so when George joined, they just kind of kept it in and then went with the flow. But given some little cues in the script itself, the draft that I have of Scared Dares, which is simply called Halloween, doesn't include the transition at the beginning about Mr. Conductor's cousin coming to Shining Time Station, therefore introducing George. So anyway, feel free to come up with your own theories, or, you know, you can poke holes in mine if you like, if you support it, let me know. But you can have a look. If you go onto my Twitter, I put a link to all of the Shining Time Station and Thomas episode scripts, and sometimes several drafts. So have a look through there. And yeah, make some of your own theories and guesses.
Yes, follow Adrian. You will have some very good Shining Time goodies in due time.
This is not just a shameless plug for my Twitter.
It is not, we promise.
We promise.
There's a purpose behind all of this.
Oh, man. And one more thing I noticed too, Mike, is that in this episode, we get more lore around Stacy's granny. And she starts those sort of like, my old granny used to say.
We do, and I guess this would technically, it's weird to think about this because we're just so used to hearing about her all the time, but I guess this is the first mention of Stacy's granny in the whole series.
Well, she does mention her in the first episode.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
And I noticed this was something that whoever's editing the wiki got slightly wrong. So she does say, like, in the days when my old granny used to run it. So she does mention it in passing, but you're right, Mike. This is the kind of first intentional moment where she kind of goes into those, like, my granny used to say.
Right.
Use that voice.
Which we do get a lot of this season.
We do, and I like it. It's sweet, and sometimes you can tell she's making it up. She's just kind of making it up, because Ringo will say, your granny never said that. I think it's just charming, though. Any other thoughts for you on this episode, Mike?
I really don't have much else to say, and I know that that might be disappointing to those of you who are hoping for something a little more critical, but it's really just a nice episode. You should have ripped it apart. What are you doing?
Right?
No, I'm not going to rip this one apart. It's just such a pleasant watch, and it's a nice little wind down sort of episode in my view.
Absolutely. And just before we move into ratings, I have a little section that I want to add into our podcast reviews, and that is kids' activities, because I know when they were creating season 1, they were very mindful of, okay, what are the activities that kids can do at home in this episode, which I think is a great way to foster creativity. So in this one,
absolutely,
it's very clear. We've already said it. It's about strings. So we've got, Tanya doing cat's cradle, getting stuck, and Matt helping her out, and that being a lesson. We've got the beautiful string flowers happening. We've got string being used for a sign, being used for shoelaces. It's very multi-purpose. So there's a lot that kids could say, Mom, do you have like a ball of yarn or something? I want to whatever. I think that's really fun. And then
I think so too. Yeah. And we'll see it, of course, with the next episode too. That's where it really stuck out to me for the first time. But yeah, it's really fun how much the early seasons, or the early episodes, I should say, really hone in on, not just the goings on of the train station or the Thomas stories, but also like hey kids, here's something fun you can do at home if you've got just a few things lying around, you know?
I love it. I love how you said, hey kids. I love it. I think you should do a segment. The Berry truck says, hey kids, do you...
Hey kids.
Oh man. Okay, stay tuned for Hey Kids with Mike. And then just coming back to the morals, I think just it tied in with that string sort of lesson where Matt helps Tanya out of the cat's cradle. We get the message that helping others is important and often can make you feel good to do that as a byproduct. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily the main motivation to help somebody, but it can often make you feel good to help somebody. So
absolutely. Even if that somebody is Horace Schemer himself.
When there's, come on, it's Schemer. Mike, what would you give? Go ahead, sorry.
I love the kids have the awareness of that too. They're like, really? Do we really have to help Schemer? Like most kids would have like some innocence about them, be like, sure, I'll help you. But even Matt and Tanya are hip to the fact that like, really, we have to help this guy out.
They know. They're
too smart, those kids.
They are. Mike, what would you give this episode out of 10?
Oh, the eternal question. I would give this episode, I'm going to give it a solid 8 because
Sweet.
That just feels very comfortable to me. It's such a good all-around episode. There's fantastic Thomas stories. There's nice happenings in the station. I really love, of course, like I said, the interaction between Stacy and Ringo. Yeah. Harry's excitement over the string is wonderful, and of course, the payoff at the end with Schemer is just incredible. So yeah, I give it a very easy 8 because it's not one that I would immediately choose if someone was like, hey, put on a Shining Time Station episode for me. Mm-hmm. This wouldn't be the first one that comes to my mind, but like if I see it recommended, or you know, if I see it's coming on next on the autoplay feature or whatever, I'm like, oh yeah, let's watch this one.
Yeah, that's a very respectable rating, and I as you're speaking, I'm like changing my rating in my head a little bit, but I don't know. Yeah, okay, I'm gonna go and be a bit of like a right on track annoying person and say that I'm going to do an 8.75 here because I was torn between like I was going to do a 9 and I was going to do an 8.5. I'm going to say 8.75. It's a very solid A for me. I think it's nice. For all the reasons that we've already kind of covered. Great flow, great integration of the Thomas stories. People are very comfortable in their characters. The music flows well, the segments flow well. I really enjoy watching it. I've seen it 100 times and I still get joy out of it. So that's a good sign for me. So yeah, 8.75 it is.
A very respectable rating. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Apologies. I forget who it is on the Right on Track team that hates those 0.00925 kind of ratings, but sometimes you just gotta do it. Yeah.
And when in doubt, blame Connor Jonas.
Yes, okay, we'll blame you, Connor. We love you, but
it's your fault, Connor. We love you, but yes, it's your fault for the stickler ratings that we're implementing here.
Oh man.
Hi, I'm Mike O'Donnell, one of the composers of the original Thomas the Tank Engine theme, and I'm here to tell you that I have released a selection of re-recorded themes and songs from the classic shows in a series of albums called the Engine Themes. These albums include a variety of classic themes and songs from the original TV series, as well as a few new compositions. You can purchase these albums on CD or digital download, as well as posters and pin badges. Have a look online at modmusic.co.uk. And for a special offer for Right on Track listeners, you can use the special code ROT20 for a 20% discount on all digital downloads. Be sure to enter the code when making your purchase. Thank you for your support and happy listening. Take care and stay safe.
All right, so we are moving into episode 5, which is titled Show and Yell.
Yes, indeed.
Yes. Mike, would you like to give us a little summary of this delightful nugget of an episode?
I certainly would love to, my friend. We open this episode with a very jovial sort of intro. We've got everyone in the station saying hello to each other, only for some strange voices to pipe in and say hello to Matt and Tanya.
Hello, passenger.
Hello, ma'am.
Hello, Tanya. Hello, Stacy. Hello, Tanya. Hello, Matt. Hello, Mr. Conductor.
Well, hello, Tanya. Howdy, Matt.
Hello, Matt. Hi there, Tanya.
Hi, Grandpa. Hello, Harry. Hi there, Schemer. Hi there, Schemer.
Hi there, Schemer. Hi there, Schemer.
Hello, Money. Hello, Money.
Hello, Matt. Hello, Tanya.
Hello?
They discover it is a passenger who happens to be a ventriloquist slash puppeteer, however you want to term it. And he shows them the puppets that he has and gives them a little performance showing the wonders of what he can do with his little puppet friends. And of course, it inspires Matt and Tanya to try it themselves while the passenger runs into town. And they try to put on a little show like what they have seen the puppeteer do. It does not go well. They have not practiced. They flub it a little bit there and get some rather honest feedback from our good pal Schemer, of course, which is a great motivator.
You're both terrible.
This, of course, yeah. You know what I loved about your show? It was free. I love those lines. He's so good.
So good.
Of course, the kids start to bicker with each other a little bit. They blame each other for the show going awry. They get some guidance from Stacy and Harry. Eventually, they put their differences aside with some new puppets that they have made, and they go on to practice a little bit more to the delight of everyone and put on an amazing show. And the episode ends on a very happy note.
Lovely. Couldn't have put it better myself.
It's wonderful.
It is wonderful.
And, I gotta say, I really love that we got some integration of people who worked on the show but were more behind the scenes, because, for those who don't know, the passenger is played by Alan Seamock, who was a member of the Flexitoon Puppeteers.
Yes.
And I think it was he only Tex's speaking voice starting with "'Tis a Gift"?
Something like that. I can't totally recall it right now.
I think,
but
because I think someone else voiced him in season one.
It was the set designer.
Wayne White, that's who
Wayne
it was.
White, thank you, Wayne White. Yeah,
yes.
He voiced Tex, I believe, in season one. And then, I think it switched to Alan Seamock. And then Alan worked with the Puppet Gang for the whole run of the show.
Yeah, he did. He performed specifically Tex, obviously, because he voiced him as well. And he also did Grace the Bass.
Yes!
One of our favorites.
Oh, absolutely.
We'll give it up for Alan. Alan sadly passed away in 2019, but we thank him for his contributions to the series as a whole. Wonderful contributions.
Yes, he was very beloved by the Flexitoon crew. I've heard Craig and Olga talk about him very fondly. And it's neat that he uses his real name when he says, "My name's Al."
Yeah, I agree with that. And you know what? I can understand Craig and Olga's testimonies, because he comes off as very warm and very friendly in this episode.
Yeah, he's a great guy, and he's kind of what stands out in this episode to me. I have a little tidbit to share. So this episode prompted me to reach out to Alan when he was still alive. And it was in the late 90s, a little, teenage Adrian sent an email out into the world, and Alan wrote back, which was so nice.
That's really nice.
I wish I still had the email. I don't anymore. I remember I tried to find it, but it's way, way lost. It was so long ago. I think it must have been maybe 10, 11, something like that. And I wrote to him and asked him if he was the same person that voiced Tex, and he wrote back and said yes. And I asked him, I think, if there were any other plans to release any other Shining Time specials or Shining Time episodes. He says not that he's aware of. And then he signed it Tex, which was so sweet. And then I was overjoyed getting this message. Couldn't believe it. And then I wrote him like this huge message back, which was probably, you know, when you get a little bit and then you just write a whole bunch, and then he didn't reply to that one, sadly. But
oh, well, that's, yeah. But
I probably came off a little too strong, but yeah, it was a nice exchange. He was a kind guy, and I think he kept puppeteering, and he was very well known for his ventriloquist acts. And apparently these two dummies, was it Samuel and Eugene, I think?
Wasn't one of them named... I thought one was named, like, Laszlo or something.
Oh, yeah, sorry, Laszlo and Eugene,
right?
Pardon me. Yep.
Yeah.
You're correct. That's absolutely it. Laszlo and Eugene were the name of his dummies that he went on the road with. So these are...
is that so?
Yeah. Because when I brought it up with Craig, he said Laszlo and Eugene. So these were two very well-known characters of his. Which is kind of an interesting fact. It wasn't just, you know, part of the Shining Time lore. And I imagine when they're looking for guest stars, I don't know if Alan expressed interest or how that happened, but I think it worked really well. And the kids playing with the dummies. I did think it was a bit odd, though, how he's like, can you watch my bags? And then they're like, can we play with your puppets? And he's like, sure, Matt, Tanya. I'm like, I wouldn't leave my bags and my beautiful ventriloquist dummies with two random kids at a train station. Like, that's where maybe that's just like my anal retentiveness. But
hey, listen, Adrian, the world of Shining Time is a very trusting one.
Apparently, I was like, what if those kids just like rifled through his luggage and broke his ventriloquist dummies that he's like spent his life savings on? And...
yeah, exactly.
Anyway, I digress. Sorry. Anyway, yeah, tangent. But...
hey, it's true. Listen, kids, in real life, please do not trust your belongings to a stranger at a train station, because I can't guarantee it will play out exactly like it does in this episode.
And also, if this was an airport, this episode would have played out a lot differently.
Oh,
just
don't even get me started on that.
Oh, that's very, that would be a very dark turn. Anyway, Mike, what are the standout moments in this episode for you?
Well, you know, there's a lot of them. I particularly like the journey that Matt and Tanya go on with. You know, they try to do the puppet show as they've seen it. It doesn't go well. But then they have a little redemption at the end of the episode. And I think it's a really important lesson for kids to learn that, you know, it's okay to fumble. It's okay to not get it right the first time. Yeah. Everything takes practice. You just got to keep working at it. And, you know, there are a lot of kids who do grow up with those perfectionist tendencies, and, you know, they always have to be 100% and everything has to be right the first time.
That was me.
You know, yeah, you know what? That's me. That's still me to this day in a way. But, you know, it's good to have these reminders of like, you know what? Not everything is going to be a slam dunk. Sometimes you got to miss. And it's when you have those misses that you learn what you need to do to correct it, so you don't have misses anymore. So
it's true.
It's a very important thing. And I like the way that they wrote the journey. You know, it's kind of funny that I'd never really thought about this before, but it's funny how when they're trying to perform with the fancy, expensive, you know, ventriloquist dolls, everything kind of goes belly up. But it's only after Harry and Stacy help them make their own little puppets, then they find their own groove too.
That's a really interesting point. Almost like it's more of an extension of themselves, and it maybe comes more naturally. Yeah.
It's kind of a metaphor for, like, you know, we think about the first time that they're trying to do their little show. They're just trying to copy what Al did.
Exactly.
But then, when they get their new puppets, they make up their own little things. And it's like, okay, well, maybe that's another little moral, is don't try and, you know, copy what someone else has done.
Yeah.
Make it your own thing. Do your own little unique spin, and, you know, things will work out a little bit better for you.
Yeah. Totally. And I think the themes are pretty nuanced as well. You know, at the beginning, we sort of get the theme, you know, when Mr. Conductor's coming in and they're playing with the puppets, and he asks Tanya, can you say a bag of boots without moving your lips? And he's like, you're not trying. And he sort of says, well, you got to give it a go. Like, don't just say you can't do it. But at the same time, don't give it a go so hard without preparing. You know, if you're going to perform for people, that's another thing. So it says, you know, don't be afraid to give it a try, but also, yeah, if you're going to do a performance, then prep for it. So it's there, you know, it's important messages, but in different directions, interestingly.
Yeah, I agree completely. And the one thing that sticks out to me, and I'm sure you'll bring this up in the last segment when we talk about this, but I really love that, you know, when Matt's talking to Harry and he says, well, we won't have time to practice because the man's coming back for his puppets. And Harry goes, oh, is that the problem? And then they start, you know, making their own little hand puppets and all that. And then you see Stacy making the sock puppet with Tanya. And I don't know, I just think that's really sweet that it's like, it's really, you know, phoning home to kids at home too, that like, you don't need the most fancy, the most expensive thing in order to have fun and do something creative. You know, all it takes is an idea.
That's it. And I will say, little Adrian made a sock puppet from this episode. It was a red sock.
Oh, man.
And it had 2 little embroidered patterns that were stuck on for eyes. And then I forget what its mouth was. Or maybe that was its mouth and it had 2 button eyes. But I can guarantee you it was because of this episode.
You know what? I think we should we need to put out a public message to anyone who made a sock puppet because of this episode in particular. I want to start a focus group. We got to see those sock puppets, guys. Come on.
Oh, man. And it's such a great thing to have kids do because, my God, parents doing laundry, socks are going to get lost. And, like, you're going to have those, like, 2, 3 poor, sad, spare socks. What better thing to do than make, you know, 2 or 3 different puppets to put on a show with your friends? I loved doing that kind of stuff when I was a kid, and I would rush into it. I remember I'd be like, watch us, and we'd, you know, just do this like random stuff, but
just completely blow it.
Yeah, right. We wouldn't even care. We'd just be dancing around. But that segment that you're describing with the music and the creation of the puppets, and also Stacy comforting Tanya, I will cry every single time I watch that segment. There is something about the music and something about the connection between Stacy and Tanya and Harry and Matt that is just really sweet and playful. And interestingly, I sent that little segment to Nicole Rochelle, who played Tanya recently, because I just was I was speaking about that example in my podcast, but didn't have it for them. And I sent it to her and she's like, oh, that is so touching. Thank you so much. So yeah, that holds a special place in my heart. I just wanted to add that in. Yeah,
that's a beautiful little segment. Like the music is very impactful. And I also like that they made it so that it was Matt and Harry and Tanya and Stacy rather than, you know, sticking with them just going to their familial connection. It really helps to enforce that, like, the whole station is a family. You know, it's not down to just your blood relation. It's everybody is a one big family at the station.
They are. And, you know, I noticed in particular when I was watching it, Tanya did a great job at being bummed out. It was very well acted. Especially, like, I noticed not only in that scene, but also when they're really bummed after their first show is a total failure, and then she says, like, there's not going to be a next time. Like, her whole, like, you can only see her lips, like, you can't see her whole face, but she really embodied that disappointment quite well. These kids did really well, I think. I'd like to give them credit.
Yeah, they really did.
And like, even when they're fighting, it's really believable. I think they were very well cast as a pair. They function very well together.
Yeah, I agree. I think that they really come into their own as the series goes on, and here is a great example of that. They really slip into the roles and they embody what I think most kids in their position would feel. So yeah, kudos to them.
I agree. What do you think, just on the subject of Harry, while we're talking about him, what do you think of the whole Isaac Drips, John Bull story?
Oh man, I love that whole segment. I think it's great as a little railroad history segment in its own right. But I also just love Harry's storytelling, and you know, Leonard Jackson has such a great voice for telling these kind of, you know, early stage America stories, and you know, it's fun. It's such a great little. It ties in perfectly to the whole theme of the episode, of course. and it retains the train element that we're used to with this show. But yeah, it's just a fun little break. It's a history lesson and it's a teachable moment all in one.
I live for that segment. I know the whole thing off by heart, and it just is delicious to listen to him.
It's so fun
talking about it. Yeah, it's the visuals I enjoyed as a kid too, and just his narration, and then Matt coming in and asking some questions at the end, and when he just said he didn't give up when things went wrong, and neither should you. And it doesn't feel cheesy. I don't know why. I think maybe because, like you said, it just flows with the episode well.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, when I first watched this episode, I had no knowledge of the John Bull. I didn't know what it was. So to have this as an introduction, I feel very lucky.
It's great. And also, he says, it's at the Smithsonian Institute in Washington. It's an invite for kids to go with their families and check out this engine. So there's a way that Shining Time Station makes kids engage with the world that I think is really special. Because it doesn't just only like tell you about these things, but it says, go look at this yourself or go make this yourself. I think it helped me to be more outgoing as a kid. And I think that's a really great hallmark of good children's television.
I agree. Yeah, it should make you want to, not just sit in the confines of your home. It should make you want to go out and explore and see the world.
Right. Because like you might watch a couple episodes and then do something. You're not just going to stay watching Shining Time all day long.
Exactly.
So I commend the show for that.
I do too. Really, really wonderful stuff on their part.
What do you think of the kind of concluding James stories in this set?
Oh my goodness. Well, first of all, again, integrated wonderfully into the Shining Time plot, especially the way that the first story, Troublesome Trucks / Foolish Freight Cars, is integrated. It just works really well. It's about not giving up. It's a very triumphant moment for James. I will say, and I think a lot of people disagree with me on this, but I think the next story, James and the Express, or A Proud Day for James, it's my favorite of that first batch of James stories. I think it's such a triumphant story.
I really enjoy it too.
Yeah. I think it's the dynamic that James and Gordon have, where it starts off very adversarial, and Gordon is obviously the bigger engine putting down the smaller one, but by the end they make a point to let you know that like now they're good friends. They've come around to each other, and it's a very triumphant end for James's introduction. And again, it's really well integrated that as the kids are having their redemption moment, here we are. So is James. It's a beautiful episode, and I don't know. This is definitely one of my favorites from the first series of Thomas, and even in the Railway series. I mean, it's not the best book that Wilbert ever wrote, but even this little story is it's a great moment, and it's a great early establishing moment of victory.
I agree. I always liked it when it came on, and I enjoy the more slow-moving stories in season 1, and just kind of it's well paced, and I like I love the scene with Gordon just slinking into the station, and then James saying, "Is it tomorrow?" I find that very comical. So when people are sort of like, "Oh, nothing happens," I'm just like, back off, haters.
I also lament the fact that we never saw James and the Express again on Shining Time Station, because they really missed an opportunity not using George Carlin's narration, because I absolutely love when he does James after Gordon comes back when he gets turned around, because he gives him the most annoying voice. He goes like, "Hello, Gordon, is it tomorrow?" It's like the sassiest thing.
Snap, snap.
Exactly. Maybe it was instinct. It's like, oh my God, dial it back, George. What are you doing?
Oh my God. I don't think I've heard the George version.
If you haven't heard George's version, anyone, please go do yourself a favor. Give it a listen. That moment is worth it. Entirely worth it.
Hello, Gordon. Is it tomorrow? Gordon didn't answer. He just let off steam feebly. Did you lose your way, Gordon?
No, it was lost for me. I was switched off the main line onto the loop. I had to go all round and back again.
Perhaps it was instinct, said James.
Oh my God. You know, another thing I love about this episode is Bounce Back. That song is so damn catchy. That is another earworm for me that I love Venice, but I also just love the sort of... No, I really love it.
It's such a groovy song.
It's very groovy. I wrote it is such a bop in all caps.
It is a bop.
Bounce Back.
And we have the return of our stop motion that we love so much.
Yes, and he's making like this chocolate breakfast drink.
Yeah.
I mean, who doesn't have a chocolate drink for breakfast?
It takes me right back to the age of Nesquik in the 90s.
I never had Nesquik, but I remember the commercials. My parents wouldn't buy it for me.
And I'm not going to lie to you, it was awful.
Was it disgusting? Yeah.
Yeah, even as a kid, I was like, this doesn't really do it for me.
Just to loop around to the last kind of segment that we see, which is the song, the jukebox song in this episode, which is Freight Train. What are your thoughts on that song, Mike?
I like this a lot. I like the whole jukebox interaction because... I don't know if there's any other episodes in the entire series that do this, but Tito is absent.
I don't think that ever happens again.
I think this is the only time that we see an instance where not all 5 of the jukebox puppets are together.
Yeah, I wonder if it was a scheduling conflict or something. It's odd.
Listen, he's got a lot of nickels to count. There's a lot of behind the scenes bean counting.
Yeah, he's stuck in the vault just like 5, 10, 15, 20.
This is before they had a proper manager. Tito was pulling double duty. So
yeah, that's it. He needed a break.
Yeah. But again, I think it ties in well with the overall theme of the episode is that, you know, the rest of the band has to learn how to get on without their band leader. And they finally make it happen in the end. And yeah, it's a wonderful little song. It's not too fast. It's not too slow. It's just very, very easy to go along. And I think, unless I'm remembering my jukebox songs incorrectly, I think we get to hear Freight Train again in one of the family specials.
Oh, interesting. I don't know them as well, but you very well could be right.
I'm pretty sure. I think it might be in. I want to say. I think it might be during Second Chances.
Cool.
I think there's a montage with Kit and some of the other kids playing baseball, and I'm pretty sure it's in like a medley of other songs. But at that point, sung by Venice Thomas. In this instance, in this episode, sung by our one and only Rory Dodd.
Oh, a classic. I'm just checking out. Yeah, it does have a medley. I bet it's down there. But it's in that medley.
It's very brief, but I'm pretty sure it does pop up again.
Yeah, that's wicked. I love this song. This rendition's really fun because I think it suits the end of the episode as like a very celebratory, you know, kids have done their puppet show really well. Much to the celebration of, you know, all the adults in the station. And it's just a really nice send-off for Al as well. I have to say it's also a favorite song of mine in general. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Elizabeth Cotten.
Oh, yes.
Yes. And who wrote the song? and who is very well known for her unique style of guitar playing. And I'd encourage you guys to look up Freight Train by Elizabeth Cotten, and it has actually a video of her singing and playing, and it is so moving. And I legit am saying this, I want this song played at my funeral. Like, and her rendition, because it is such, it just goes right into my bones. That to me sums up what my connection to trains feels like in that song. But that particular version, the slow kind of, I just can't.
I know exactly what video you're talking about of Elizabeth Cotten too, and every time I see it, I am totally mesmerized by her guitar playing.
Oh, she is wicked talented. And also just
unreal.
Seeing her face, she like all these lines and all this experience and her voice just tells a story. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I'd be really curious to learn more about her life as well.
Yes, absolutely.
And you know, I like the show for that too, because it's encouraging kids to go look up, and you know, especially, you know, prominent Black musicians, really important. And with it being Black History Month as well.
Absolutely.
In terms of trivia, I know you mentioned No Tito, which was on my list as well. Another little trivia for those who like behind the scenes stuff. If you pay really close attention when Matt is very sadly inserting the coin into the jukebox, you get the closest shot of the song titles on the title board of the jukebox, and you can make out some of them, which is interesting because they were actually written down. Some of them say unavailable, but I think there's like She'll Be Coming Around the Mountain, Freight Train. There's a few others. Looks like the sculptor who made the jukebox just put some random train songs on there, and then with several of the songs being unavailable. But I noticed that when I was doing my jukebox research, because it really zooms right in on him. It's a very close, extreme close-up.
Well, there we are. That's perfect. Yeah. The details that you wouldn't normally see, but they still put on there anyway.
And yeah, we see all the kids' activities with the puppet show and the making puppets. And I think we've kind of gone over most of the morals here. If at first you don't succeed, try again. Don't be afraid to try something new. Those old chestnuts.
Mm-hmm. The tried and true.
Anything to add, Mike?
I think we've hit the nail on the head. It's just there's a lot of important episodes, or morals, I should say, in this episode. Yes. And yeah, they do a great job of not making it feel too on the nose. It's very easily digestible, and you can pretty much draw your own conclusions of it without being, without having to be spelled out for you, essentially.
Yeah, totally. What would you give this episode ratings wise?
I think I'm going to give this one an 8 as well.
Nice.
It's another comfy episode for me. I really like the way that it all plays out. I really like, the interaction with Alan Seamock and the kids learning such a vital lesson, and the integration of the Thomas stories is fantastic. So I think it's just it's not necessarily my first choice if I'm going to put on something from season 1 of the show. But when it comes up, I'm very happy to sit down and watch it for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I would give this one an 8.5. I really enjoy it for the reasons that I've already stated, especially that lovely instrumental segment where the kids are making the puppets with the adults. I find that very touching. I enjoy the music. The guest star is great. Good Thomas stories. Good acting. I feel that compared to the previous episode, the Thomas story segues are not quite as strong. They're still great, but not quite as seamless. So that's why I'm giving it a 0.25 less than the previous rating. Just the little things. And yeah, I think that kind of sums it up. It's a great episode. Actually, a great title, I will say. Love that title, Show and Yell.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I love a good
very
pun.
Clever. You don't say.
Me? Puns? Never.
No way.
Not on this podcast.
Never.
Hi, I'm Ken Bianco Jr. from Train World. where we have the greatest selection of model trains and train sets. We also are proud to carry Bachmann's full line of Thomas & Friends products. With a large variety of different brands and scales, we have the best items for your model train collection. You can find Train World on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram, where you can see our latest products and even be invited to all our events like Thomas Tuesdays. Visit trainworld.com today to find your next addition to your model railroad journey.
Well, I think that brings us to the end of this episode.
I believe it does. Once again, we
what
have
would you
wrapped
say,
up
Mike?
Another successful recap of a beautiful show that means so much to us.
Oh, it really does. And it really warms our hearts that you join us for our little adventures into the Shining Time verse.
Yes, it means a lot that you join us for these travels that we go on, and we are so thankful for your continued listenership and any comments that you leave. It means a lot to us.
It really does. Thank you, everyone. Thank you to our listeners. And also a big thank you to all the behind-the-scenes folks. I want to say a special thank you to Tom Denham for reaching out to Mike and I to do this podcast in the first place. And a big thank you to our sound editor, Fred. He works tirelessly at editing and inserting the music and the sound clips. So thank you so much to both you guys.
Well, thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. We love you so much.
We do love you. And tune in to our next episode, which will be episode 8, and where we'll be reviewing episodes 7 and 8 of season 1. We've already done Faith, Hope, and Anxiety, which is episode 6. So please go back to our first episode for a review of that. We will be reviewing Agree to Disagree and Whistle While You Work. Wow, that's a lot of W's. Whistle.
Really picking that one up, isn't it?
I know. I was thinking it's like the Stewie thing where he's like, what does he say? What do you remember? Stewie says something that's cool whip. Cool Whip.
I just want to get some Cool Whip.
And it's like whistle while you work. Anyway, I greatly apologize for my horrible Stewie impression. But
we will introduce it as such when we talk about it on the next episode.
We absolutely will. Well, until next time, I have been Adrian.
I have been Mike.
And this has been Time to Shine. Thanks, everyone. See you later.
Take care, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye.